at first it was. I would just try to work on myself just so I could be better for my horses and not put those feelings onto them. As time went on, I was like doing it for myself also, because when I was with the horse, I would always feel so much better.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang. After being a lifelong horse lover and entering the world of horses full-time with her first mare and a second rescue horse, Lily got her first Mustang Echo in June of 2023. She takes a soft approach, helping the horse stay as calm and comfortable as possible in her training. Lily manages an 80-acre farm in Tennessee that's home to around 25 horses, mainly consisting of Appaloosas and quarter horses. Since getting heavily involved in horses, specifically Mustangs, she's been able to work on improving herself in many areas, including how she interacts with others and her own mental and emotional health. She loves sharing her horses with others online and in person so that more people can experience the positive impact horses have. Lily, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here and coming and talking about Mustangs.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on.
How did you get involved in horses and how did that kind of lead you to Mustangs?
So, I was the kind of kid that grew up always wanting to be around horses. When I was younger, I wasn't able to actually own a horse, but I did try to spend time riding horses and even just helping take care of horses when I could. It wasn't until I was 16 that I got my first horse. And I looked for 8 months for my first mare. And it was such an exciting experience because my family bought a farm, and
Oh, cool.
really what I was waiting for to be able to own a horse because I wasn't in a position to be able to board. It was actually about a year after they bought the farm that I was able to start looking for my first horse. And I honestly don't know how long I really want to own one as opposed to just be around them. But my first mare is a 12-year-old draft mare. She's a Belgian. And I don't know what drew me to her specifically, but it was just an amazing experience. We ended up driving about 8 hours to go and get her, and it was a big learning experience for me.
Yeah.
Having her has actually taught me a lot, just like my Mustang, because probably wasn't the best first-time horse owner.
Yeah.
Had some trouble, but we've worked through it together, and I think we've both learned a lot from each other. And then, actually, about 8 months after I got her, I took on a rescue mare as well, and she is a 20-year-old Percheron. So I've fought for big horses.
Yeah, I was going to say, you started big.
Yeah, so the Belgian mare, she's about 16 hands, and then
Wow.
17 hands.
Nice.
But I think what kind of sparked my interest with the Mustangs is I really liked to watch videos on YouTube kind of showing trick training or just general tips for horse owners trying to train horses. And I came across Sam Van Fleet on YouTube, and I was like, wow, I didn't even realize you could get a wild Mustang.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really exciting. I kind of looked into it some more, and I decided for sure that someday I wanted a Mustang. But I decided it was definitely better to wait a little while before diving right into a Mustang, too.
Yeah.
I started to watch a lot of people on social media and on YouTube, and I was just amazed. I was like, there's really wild horses in America. And
yeah, it is almost an unknown world.
yeah, and I just thought it was really amazing that you can actually adopt one, too. And seeing some people have done with these horses and the bond that they create, I was like, that's just amazing. I want to give that a try, you know?
And so tell me about how long was it from when you first got horses until you got your Mustang?
It was about 2.5 years, which is a pretty short time frame.
Yeah, to be just getting into horses. That's awesome, though.
And I think it was in the March internet auction that the BLM does. I actually even planned to get my Mustang Echo because I was bidding on another horse. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Last day, I had been winning the bid on him, and then the last day, the gelding I was bidding on, he went out of my price range. And
Yeah.
I moved for one horse at the time, so I just went ahead and retracted my bid on that gelding and decided to go with a horse that didn't have any bids on him. Um,
Nice.
and that's how I ended up with Echo. And I was very nervous. Like, I would go back and forth between being so excited for pickup and
Yeah.
and doubting myself. And that's something that actually took me a while to work through, even when I first got him. It was very amazing, though. I remember when I got to the pickup, I saw him and I was like, oh my goodness. I just instantly had a connection to him, I feel like. He was just so incredible. It's hard to describe.
Yeah. So what made you pick him? There's always so many horses on the
I know.
adoption site. What kind of drew you to him at first, just from a picture?
I know that you can't ride color, but I am drawn to certain colored horses, and I thought the gray.
Mm-hmm.
So I had filtered out. I was looking for a horse in the 2 to 4 year old range, and I wanted to go with a gelding because I had all mares.
Yeah.
I kind of filtered the results on the internet auction, and I was looking through the grays, and I was tossed up between him and one other one, but there was just something that really drew me to him. I think it was his face because he has very kind eyes.
Mm.
And I think that's the biggest thing that really kind of pulled me into him. And when I watched his video, I really loved the way he moved and he just seemed like he had so much personality.
That's so fun. Yeah, and it is a big, crazy thing to just get these untouched horses from pictures and videos.
Really,
I have one of those too, and yeah, it's almost you not really sure what you're actually going to get until they arrive. When you brought Echo home, was this to the same family farm that you're at with your other horses?
so I actually have moved farms since then, but I started just
Okay.
at my family's farm.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first brought him home, we unloaded him into his pen and everything. And I was pretty nervous to unload him actually because when they separated
Yeah.
at the event, he was very anxious. I mean, he started to paw on the gates there. So I was like, oh boy, I hope he doesn't try to escape. Um,
Yeah.
Good. When he stepped off the trailer, it was like he had been there for a week already. He walked around, he was real calm, and he started eating some grass.
Mm.
And then, he went over to the water where I had his water trough. And I think that was actually a very interesting experience to watch because he seemed very scared to go up to the water and
Mm-hmm.
kind of in the middle of the herd. But I suspect maybe he's been in some fights around the water hole before. That first day home, like that evening, it was very amazing to watch him kind of settle in. He was
Mm-hmm.
calm but also reserved. I'm sure you've seen how Mustangs can act. The first few days, I just couldn't believe the progress he was making because I was very lucky that he was a very friendly and curious horse. I could tell right away, we're going to have a really nice bond if I do this the right way.
Tell me a little bit about bringing him home and what that approach was once he was there, and how was that whole experience for you guys?
So I had decided before I even picked him up, I didn't have any timelines with him because I really wanted to do things at his speed and build a nice bond with him. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
put him into anything that he wasn't ready for, and I was hoping to do a mix of positive reinforcement and some regular pressure and release. So the first couple of days, I didn't really put any pressure on him at all. I would just go out and I would sit in a chair with a book in his pen and I would put his hay kind of close to me and just let
Yeah.
him as close as he was comfortable with. And he was actually very curious. The second night home, I had his hay for the evening next to the chair, and he came up and he stayed with me for about 3 hours. He just stood next to me,
Mm.
and
Wow.
it was pretty crazy to me. And
Yeah.
the second day, also, if I was on the outside of the pen, he would approach, and I definitely wouldn't change how I did the first couple days, especially because I feel like it really helped us get to know each other without having any goals in mind. I tried to make sure I didn't have any sort of anxious energy that I wanted to get through something that day. I just really tried to go at his speed. And when I started working on first touches, it was still just as he would allow it. I wasn't trying to force it. And then that's where I used some positive reinforcement because he really liked to take hay out of your hand. And so, if he allowed me to touch his neck, I would give him some hay kind of as a reward, even though he wasn't worried about me touching him. I wanted to let him know that's what I'm looking for. I'd like to be able to touch you. And I really did try to work on building a draw with him as well. He would, I think it was day 3 or day 4, he would start following me around the pen when I was walking around to clean up or just to feed him hay. And I thought that was pretty cool too, because that's something I had struggled with my domestic horses, is having a good connection. And
having them want to be around you.
Yeah. One of the things that I really enjoyed about working with Mustangs is that they're basically a clean slate. A lot of domestic horses come with baggage from the past or other owners. And when I was like, well, this is really different. He doesn't know anything about domestic life, but he also doesn't have baggage from things that have happened in the past.
That can really work to an advantage sometime if you're able to bring them in and just show them that it can be a great experience to be with humans.
And that has taught me a lot of things too, because if I find a hole in the training, I'm like, okay, I'm the one that left the hole because I'm the only one that has been interacting with him. So it's helped me as like a horse person as well. So I can really look and say, okay, I missed this and now it's causing him to be anxious in this area. So I need to go back and fix that with this horse. And the next horse I do, I need to remember that and keep it in mind.
Do you have some examples of those places where you kind of stepped back and learned as you went that this is where you needed to solidify that?
Yeah, so I think that I got lucky with Echo because I know a lot of Mustangs are pretty scared when it comes to leading. And he really resisted pressure at all. And then I figured out when he does get spooked, he does sometimes have brace in him. So that was something that was hard because I never put him in a position when he was worried to see how he would react if he was, not able to move his feet as much as he wanted to. And it was very good. The first thing that happened where I was like, okay, I need to go back and fix that. He had gotten spooked when he was tied, actually. And luckily, he didn't set back and hurt himself because he did hit the end of the lead rope. And after a minute of consideration, he was like, okay, wait, I have felt pressure before. But I do wish that I had kind of worked with that a little bit more before moving on to tying him so often. Thing is, especially with his feet, is I wish that I had done more rewards when I first started handling his feet, because he would allow me to handle them pretty easily. So I just assumed, oh yeah, I'm okay with it. And then as I started to progress more in other areas, I never really advanced, holding his feet in different positions or for longer amounts of time. And so there have been a few struggles, with like farrier visits and stuff, because now he's like, well, you're not supposed to hold my foot up that long. Go back and do a lot of positive reinforcement with the feet handling. And I see now, like, working with other young horses or other Mustangs, I would definitely handle their feet more and expose them to more scary things. Because that was another thing I did with him. He was very relaxed about most new things, so I never made it a point to do a lot of things that could be considered scary, like crossing tarps or ditches or water. Because most of the time he's very brave, but he ended up having to wear a blanket at one point, and I was kind of surprised, but not fully surprised, that he was pretty concerned about actually wearing the blanket.
Yeah.
So I think in the beginning, if I were to change anything, I probably would have done a little bit. I don't like to call it desensitizing because that can be taken the wrong way. Exposure to more things.
Yeah, a chance for them to see that things are safe.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think with the feet, like, that's such a tricky one. We think, oh, they should just stand and pick up their feet. But that's a really huge exercise in trust, I think, for the horses, because you're basically taking away their defense mechanisms. So to be able to allow them to see, like, yeah, it's okay, it's safe, and you can even have your foot back if you need it. We're not going to hold it indefinitely. I think that's a really good thing to remember. I also really love that, you saw these things and, you can go back and address them. Like, it's not a once and done. So as you go through this training experience, there's always this opportunity to go back and analyze those spaces and see what can be done better. So I really love that.
I agree completely.
Now, you said when you got the idea to get the Mustang, started getting them, you had a lot of doubt. Tell me a little bit more about that and how that all played out and resolved itself and how that all is now.
I feel like at times in my life, I've been like, I'll have a moment of confidence and then I doubt myself. And that's
Yeah.
happened with when I actually bid on the Mustang and won him. I was
Yeah.
leading up to it, I was like, I think I can do it. And then when I won him, the first thing I thought was, my goodness, I won my horse. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I can't gentle a wild Mustang. And I think that horses in general have really helped me overcome some of that. And especially
Yeah.
experience with Echo, it's really helped me in a lot of ways, but it has helped me with my confidence. I think just seeing as he progressed, and I was the only one working with him. I didn't have a trainer helping me at the time. And so when we got to a little milestone, it was very comforting for me, I feel like, because I was like, I really can do this if I go at the pace that works for us. Um,
Yeah.
and that's something I've been able to apply to a lot more situations since I've, worked with Echo, especially, just to kind of sometimes I need to take a step back, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with doing things at your pace sometimes if that helps with your confidence. Because if you get in a rush, I think that's part of the problem I've had in the past is, if you get in a rush and you just try to get through it and it doesn't go the way you're hoping, it can really do a number on your confidence. But I think just what I would recommend to people is, don't try to put a timeline on certain things and just, even if you have to do small tasks to build up your confidence in yourself, it's very important, I think, to have confidence in yourself because it's hard to describe, but it just has changed a lot since I've been conscious about it and tried not to doubt myself so much, even just smaller tasks.
Yeah. That's really cool because also, kind of like you said, you maybe didn't really know going in how to gentle a wild Mustang, but it sounds like you were always open to learning and, to give it a try. And I think sometimes we really do, whether it's horses or just other things in life, we really kind of have to jump in and figure it out as we go and
Yeah,
just realize all the experts out there weren't always experts either. Like they started at the same place that we're starting when we try something new.
getting help with horses or other areas of your life either. But like you said, you never really know until you try.
What are some of the other lessons that you've learned through your experience with horses and Mustangs in particular?
So, with Mustangs in particular, I feel like I've learned so much more about the horse in terms of herd interactions and horse body language because all of that is there with a domestic horse. But I feel like with Mustangs, it's kind of heightened.
Mm-hmm.
Just such a strong bond with the herd in the wild. And the body language between the domestic horses we have here is definitely similar to the wild horses, but you can tell there's a little bit of a difference in the way the Mustang interacts with the herd compared to how the domestic horses interact with each other. And I think when you pick up an untouched Mustang, you just have a horse that is just a pure horse, This kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. They're a clean slate. They don't understand human language, they only understand horse language. So you really have to pay attention to the little signs, even just your posture or your energy. That means a lot to a horse, more than most people realize. And so I think that I've worked with two other Mustangs briefly, other than just him, and I think that understanding horse body language and just how they interact with each other can really help, even if you don't want to be a big trainer, if you just want to interact with your horse easier. They do have a lot to teach you if you will just watch and listen sometimes. There's nothing wrong with skipping a ride and just going out to sit and watch how the horses interact with each other. That's something I do frequently, and sometimes it's hard to describe, but if you're watching a herd, sometimes you'll just see something in the way they interact that'll stand out to you, and you're like, okay, so it'll give you an idea of what you can do in a training session that they might understand a little bit more clearly than the way humans normally go about things.
I love the language that you use for that. That you are talking about kind of learning their language, because it really is, you are having to learn whole new ways to communicate. And I think a lot of times we go at it from a human angle where it's like, this is how I know how to do it. But that's really neat when you just talk about sitting back and observing that you're learning their language now instead of trying to get them to learn yours.
And it's made a very big difference for me because when I got my first horse, I didn't know about all that. So she has a lot of problems with anxiety, and especially anxiety being away from the herd. And I'll be honest, when I first got her, I would, of course, try to make her do things she didn't want to do because I didn't understand horses as well as I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I had, because I think it would have been a lot easier for her to transition if I had been a little bit more aware of how she was feeling and how I could better communicate to her. And we're starting to make a lot of progress now that I understand horses a lot better. But it's definitely something that has set me and her back. And I think it's very hard, especially if you only have like one horse. They still talk to you a lot, but it can be kind of harder to pick up because you don't have the opportunity to watch them in a herd setting.
Mm.
But I still think that even if someone only had one horse, it's definitely beneficial to just kind of watch the horse, and you'll still get ideas of things you can try, whether you're training with a goal or if you're just playing around. And I think it's important too to have plenty of sessions where you just have hangout time, or you just don't really have a major goal, you just want to play around with stuff.
That's a great point, because a lot of times we think we have to be doing something, but sometimes just being there with the horse and not necessarily doing the interaction, but even letting them initiate it, that can go a long way in just building your relationship and even opening up those communication lines.
It's something that I've been guilty of before, where I really wanted to get something done in a session, so I tried to rush through it. And usually when that happens, it doesn't really go the way you want it to. Because the horse, I've heard so many people talk about it, and I completely agree. The horse knows that you have intention.
Yeah, it's a really careful balance, it seems like, between pushing and making progress and also just having it be a learning experience and interaction and working on the relationship. So there really are a lot of things to balance, more than just like, this is our goal, this is what we're going to do today.
I think it's so important to try your best with the balance. I can always tell if I've been pushing too hard or not hard enough, because sometimes, if I try to set too many goals and try to work too hard several sessions in a row, then my horses let me know. They're like, can you just not? Let's just have a hangout day. You can just kind of, they're like, I don't want to do it today. I like you better when you don't ask anything of me.
That's awesome that you are able to step back and see that and to realize that. Do you feel like your interactions with your other horses have changed a lot since getting Echo and working with him?
Absolutely. Especially with my mare, the Belgian that I mentioned in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Especially working with her, I feel like I've really changed my perspective of working with horses in general. Trying to give them more time to process things instead of moving on to the next thing. Acknowledging their concerns leaving the herd, but also trying to reassure them that it will be okay. You'll get to go back with your herd. And that's been a very long process with my Belgian mare. But I did get an opportunity to work with a trainer local to me who is also with my understanding of horses. And she said the biggest thing to remember with horses is that you're always trying to direct their thoughts. We get so caught up in trying to move their shoulders or their feet or their hip that we forget that it's the thought that will lead the horse. So if their thought is out in the pasture with their herd mates, they're less likely to be actually paying attention to what you're asking of them. And that can also make them more prone to spooking at things because they're thinking about where their buddies are out in the pasture instead of being present in the moment.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's something I've actually also thought about. I have my gelding, he gets really anxious when he's away from my mare. So we've been working on that some. And it is, again, a careful balance of, when do you show some empathy and when do you push past it a little bit? And just what you said reminded me, I find it really interesting just to correlate back to human behavior and just, where our thoughts are and how we're kind of managing our emotions. Because I think, yeah, same with our thoughts, right? We can get stuck somewhere and we just can't move past it. And no matter what we're doing, we're stuck on whatever's making us sad or upset, and it's not definitely good to acknowledge, like, yeah, I see that I'm taking you away from your herd and I can see that you're anxious. And then also to be able to see when it's like, yes, you're anxious, but you're also safe and it's okay, like, to move on. Or, yeah, this sad thing happened, but you're also okay. And it's okay for you to move past that and to keep working for things to be better.
I completely agree. And I think that looking at horses from that perspective has also helped me as a person. Sometimes you're so caught up with thinking about something that's happened in the past or something you're worried about in the future that you really forget to be present in the present. And that can
Right.
be detrimental. It's something that I've done a lot, is just let myself be worried about things that happened in the past or in the future. And I think that her breaking down horses and their thoughts, actually, that gave me a moment where I was like, well, that makes so much sense, even as a person.
Are there some ways that you've implemented that in your life or some strategies you've used? Or even like with the horses, how do you identify, like, we're going to push a little more now, we're going to get past this, versus it's okay to like look and feel or to like have that anxiety a little bit and then to address it and move forward?
One thing I like to do a lot is I refer to it as like asking a horse to let go of a thought. So even
Mm-hmm.
if you're out in the pasture and you've just caught your horse and they just want to look at their herd mates, one thing that the trainer I worked with taught me is just ask your horse to focus on you. So
Mm-hmm.
you and like on their nose and tip their nose to you and ask them to let go of that thought of being back with the herd. Or
Mm-hmm.
um if you're lunging your horse and you feel like they're kind of just mindlessly going around in a circle,
Mm-hmm.
really energy, like try to bring your energy down some and see if your horse will slow their gait without you actually telling them to slow down, or stop moving your feet altogether and see if your horse will stop and face you to see how connected they really are. And that has been something
Mm-hmm.
that I've done a lot with all of my horses, because I didn't realize at the time that I would just let them go on mindlessly, and I didn't really realize that their thought was elsewhere. Um,
Mm-hmm.
until she mentioned that to me and kind of guided me through it. And I was like, that really does make a big difference if your horse is present with you. And one thing that you can do, like if you're riding your horse, this is something I do with Echo, is if I feel like his thoughts are starting to drift and he's starting to get kind of anxious,
Mm-hmm.
usually a little clicking sound to him. And if his ears flick back to me, I know that he is still paying attention to me. But when he's
Mm-hmm.
paying attention at all, usually, I'll ask him to turn and bring his attention back to me or something like that. And as far as like deciding when to push or when to give a break and go back kind of towards where the horse is comfortable, I think it just entirely depends on the situation, honestly. I think if your horse is like extremely stressed and really wants to bolt or something, normally if a
Yeah.
horse is that, I'll go back and forth. A lot of trainers talk about that, walking back towards the herd and then walking back away towards like a trail if you're going out of the pasture or whatever. But I don't know exactly what makes me determine when to push and when to not. I guess it's just kind of a feeling that I get. It's hard to describe. To get to know your horse so that you can know like kind of what their stress level is. Because obviously, if they're extremely stressed, you want to try not to push them too hard. If you feel
Right.
a amount of stress, it's good to push them a little bit and then maybe give them a reward as far as like allowing them to see their herd mates like turn around or something.
I love the lessons that horses kind of teach us and the way that they correlate with our life in general. So right now we have kids that are teenagers and they're kind of getting on to moving out. And I've talked with my husband about how like it is this careful balance between like you want to push them and encourage them and help them reach their potential, but if it's too much, you'll break them. And that's like the same thing with the horse. You want to encourage them and you want them to reach their potential. But if we're pushing them when they're not ready, like that is when we're getting those strong reactions where they're bolting or bucking or whatever it might be. Like it was too much. It reached that threshold that, now they're not progressing at all. They're in this state of fight or flight and really trying to protect themselves.
And I think that your own feelings can really affect that a lot.
Mm.
Anxious that your horse is going to get anxious, that'll just make the horse anxious faster. And that has been one of the things that has really helped me is letting go of things before you get to the horse at the best that you can. And it'll be really hard at first, but the more you work with horses, the easier it gets to let go of things. And I've started applying that to my life in general because I have tended to be like easily stressed and fairly anxious. Practicing with my horses, letting go of stress and anxiety before I go in the pen so that I don't make my horses anxious has helped me in regular life. If I find myself just holding on to something that's unnecessary, it's easier for me to let go of that.
Are there specific things that you do that have helped you to let go and kind of reset before you go in with the horses?
It kind of sounds funny, but I kind of just imagine like holding on to the stress or whatever I'm holding on to in my hand and like setting it down. And it sounds silly to me personally. And I usually do a lot of like deep breaths to kind of help decompress my. And I just try really hard to think about the horse and pay attention to what is the horse's body language saying? What are they thinking about? Are they thinking about me or are they thinking about being stressed about something I'm doing or thinking outside of the pen? So I just try to really focus on the moment with the horse instead of worrying about things that happened earlier in the day or things I need to do later in the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that conscious awareness, I feel like is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, just being aware of how you're feeling is a huge thing. I think so often we're not even aware, like, I'm so stressed right now. But if we can gain that awareness, like, I am feeling stressed right now. And, like you say, just kind of take that and lay it down. And even whether that's through a visual or through our thoughts saying, like, I'm stressed, but it's okay. I've done what I can or whatnot. That's really cool. I like that.
And it's something that I apply to myself all the time now. If I'm going through my day and I realize I'm feeling very stressed right now, I usually will try to figure out the cause because sometimes, you can get stressed and you're like not exactly sure what's causing you to feel that way. So I
Yeah.
think what is causing me stress, and then kind of like you said, either it's something that you can't change right now, or you've done all that you can for the time, so it's time to lay that aside for a while, because there's nothing you can do about it right now. Try to not let it bother you too much. I mean, because it can be
Right.
detrimental into your mental health for sure.
Yeah, just that awareness is huge. At least, and I'll speak for me, but it seems like it's really easy to go through this world like very unaware of how we're feeling, what's bothering us. We might feel anxious, but not even know why, or not even realize like your heart's racing. You just kind
Yeah,
of feel that frantic energy without identifying what it's associated with.
definitely. That's something I've definitely been guilty of.
You talked a little bit or told me a little bit about how the horses and Echo in particular have helped you through some challenging times. Do you want to talk some more about that?
Sure. So when I first got Echo, it was a little while before I decided to move to the farm that I'm at now. Full time for me because I was feeling overwhelmed about a lot of things in my life revolving around the farm. Sometimes family can be overwhelming. Being with Echo I knew that I had to let go of the stress or anxiety or bad feelings because I didn't want it to affect Echo negatively. And I didn't want him to get to the point where he saw me as just a ball of nerves all the time. And that would definitely damage the bond we have, you know? So having him has definitely helped me because even when I was, you know, so stressed and so frustrated with the situation, that was kind of a relief for me. I could go out to the Mustang pen and try to put most of that aside and, you know, work with the horse so that it was kind of just a break so that I wasn't thinking about what was stressing me out.
Mm,
I wish I could change this, but I can't. Because when you're with the horse, it's so important to just be with the horse. Um,
yeah.
and I think that all horses have that kind of calming effect on people, especially if you're just spending time with them and not working on training or anything like that. But it's kind of hard to describe just the effect that he had on me. He just made me feel like everything was going to be okay, even though it was a stressful time for me.
I can relate to that a lot, just times of chaos in my life where it's like everything in the human world feels like it's falling apart or is not going the way I want it to, or so much to worry about. And I felt the same way. I could go out with my horses and it kind of gives you a chance to let it go, to just reset in a way and just have a break from all of it, to get like a chance to breathe sometimes.
Yeah,
And I love also how you talked about like you wanted to be better for him, which is so cool. And then in turn, it sounds like it really helped you, but he was your motivation.
yeah.
Sometimes it seems like we're not motivated enough for ourselves. We kind of need someone or something to push ourselves to say, "Hey, yeah, you can do a little bit better." And cool if we can do it for a horse and it helps us in turn.
That's something that I've definitely can agree with. I never really had the motivation to work on myself. You know, I would just be anxious and sometimes I would just feel depressed even though I didn't have a real reason to feel that way. I just
Yeah.
would, and it really weighed me down. And I think that having the horses just kind of gave me the motivation to really try and work on myself, even if it was just for the horses. At first, it was. I would just try to work on myself just so I could be better for my horses and not put those feelings onto them too. And then as time went on, I kind of was like doing it for myself also. Because when I was with the horse, I would always feel so much better. And I was like, you know, I think that if I work on myself more, you know, I can feel good even when I'm not with a horse. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's very important too. Like, I never really considered my own mental health to be that important until I really started paying attention to it. And I was like, you know, I do want to feel better. And it takes work, you know, and there's still bad days sometimes, but I think that just practicing that with the horses was what made the really big difference for me.
Yeah, those bad days I think will always come, unfortunately, in one form or another. Was there a time when you felt that there was a switch to where you were doing it for him and now it's kind of like, I want to do this for myself also? Did that also come with the confidence, do you think, that you kind of gained with horse training?
I would say so, because for a long time I kind of had a very hard time making any kind of decisions for myself, because I usually relied on other people to do it for me. Um,
Yeah.
And I've been trying to be more independent and like I talked about with you, my confidence with working with horses has helped my confidence as a person too. And I would say it did come with that, like you were mentioning. Like as far as like when there was a switch, I think that it was probably around the time that I moved over to this new farm.
And how did that, I mean, that sounds like kind of a big life change. How did that change and play out as, corresponding with your interactions with your horse?
I had really been wanting to get kind of deeper into the horse world, and I had this really awesome opportunity to come help manage like a breeding farm, but I also train horses here too. And it's given me a really cool opportunity because most of the mares that are out in the main herd are almost like Mustangs. You know, they are gentle enough to where you can walk up to them and put a halter on them, but that's all. I mean, they're pretty much clean slates as well. So that has been a really amazing thing for me is that even though they're not actually Mustangs, I've been able to learn a lot from those mares as well. And this opportunity is basically exactly what I was hoping to do. I really wanted to get into training horses, but also just learning more about managing them in a herd setting or as individuals. I'm always wanting to learn more. I love learning about horses and how the horse thinks and how the horse interacts, all that kind of stuff.
Was there something in particular that kind of gave you the courage to make that jump from it being something you wanted to do to like, this opportunity is here and you're going to take it and go for it?
Yeah, I think it was actually kind of like what we were talking about earlier, as you just have to jump in and try it sometimes. It was kind of the same thing like with Echo. I went back and forth on it for a while, but I was like, you know what? I should just try it because there's always other opportunities if it doesn't work out. And I'm very glad that I did give it a try because it's been a very great experience. It was kind of that, like you mentioned, you just have to try it and see where it goes.
How has your relationship with Echo kind of changed from, so you've had him not quite a year yet, right?
Yeah, about 11 months now.
How has that changed and evolved over time? Like if you compare it to where you guys started to how you are now, both your relationship, I guess, with him and also maybe with yourself.
Yeah, so as far as like with him, at first, even though he was a very gentle horse, I was nervous, of course. I mean, he was my 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And we would take things really, really slow. And sometimes you could tell he did get a little bored, but I tried not to worry so much about myself because that's when I was still doubting myself a lot. So we decided to take it slow. But now that we've been together for almost a year, I feel like he can read me a lot better and I can read him a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
We've been more confident in the things we're trying, like longer trail rides, and we're starting to do a little bit more advanced maneuvers. And the bond we have now is just really amazing because he's getting much more comfortable leaving the herd to come with me. I can go down pasture and he'll leave his group of mares and he'll come over to me, which I think is that he trusts me that much and enjoys my presence now. And I think it was in October. It was just after I had moved, so I was pretty stressed at the time from the move. And I noticed that he did want to avoid me a lot, and I think it was because I was having trouble. And so it's been kind of interesting to see, as I've worked on myself more, the bond we have has come back, and it's come back even better.
That's neat. I think we underestimate a lot of times how it's almost like horses can sense it before us sometimes. You're off. You need to address that.
I think when I first got Echo, I was still, like I told you, so much doubting myself. Like I would feel like I could do it, and then I felt like I couldn't do it, and I'd go back and forth about it.
It's a little bit of a roller coaster.
As I've progressed with him, I've gotten more and more to where I say, I can do it. It might take me a little while to figure it out, but I can do it. And I've just been able to apply it to so many other areas of my life, like making bigger decisions for myself or even just small things. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I've just noticed such a big change in the way I process things and the way I'm able to let things and just the confidence I have. I don't feel like I'm an overconfident person, but there's definitely a big difference.
That's neat. It's really cool to see that progression. So talk about what are some of the things that you want to do in the future with Mustangs?
I would really love to do maybe one of the Mustang makeovers. That's been something I really wanted to do for pretty much since I got Echo. I would really love to be able to take a horse through the training and then obviously they get auctioned off and find a good home after. And I think that's just such a great way to show what Mustangs are capable of. Because I share my story with Echo on my Instagram, but when you are doing it in front of so many people, you can show that even though it takes a lot of work, these horses are incredible and they don't deserve to not get the attention. Like I had never heard about adopting a Mustang until I started watching videos from the Mustang makeover. I think it's such great exposure, and there's so many interesting things that people teach them, and it just gives so many people the idea that even if they don't train their own Mustang, if they find someone that can help them through the process, they can give a good home to a horse that doesn't have much right now because there's so many of them in holding.
Yeah.
And before the Mustang Heritage Foundation stopped doing their trainers incentive program, I was hoping to become one of their tip trainers. That's obviously not going to happen, but I do hope to work with some more in the future, gentling them, whether it's for the adopter or just adopting one and gentling it and finding it at home with someone that wants a gentle Mustang.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think definitely you can do it. You're well on your way. It's probably another one of those things where you just got to get out there and start finding those opportunities. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
So I have an account on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm considering starting up a YouTube channel, but we'll have to wait and see. My Instagram and Facebook are Elawadi Mustangs. That's the username. And we are in the process of getting like a merch store set up for our regular herd of horses and for the Mustangs. Um, we do plan to start posting on our TikTok more often as well.
Yeah. And where does the name for your account come from?
So that is the name of the farm that I live at, and it's the Cherokee
Okay.
word, the Native American Cherokee word for yellow hill, but some translations are for like painted earth. And because there's a hill here where you can look down over the pasture, and when you look over all the pastures and you can see all the horses grazing, that's kind of where the painted earth thing comes from.
Yeah.
So it's a very significant meaning for us personally. It's hard to describe. I'll have to look for a picture for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to see it. Has working there meshed well with the things that you've been learning with Echo and just in horsemanship in general?
Absolutely. It's been a very amazing experience, and I've been able to work with so many different horses and further my education on handling horses, understanding how they think and how they interact with each other. And it's definitely been a good experience for me because I've been able to learn so much about so many different horses. And I've been able to work with some very experienced trainers too, off and on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of getting some different perspectives that help me decide what I do like and what I don't like when it comes to working with horses and with people.
Yeah. And what are some of the ways that you have kind of picked that out, the stuff that you take? Because I'm the same way in a lot of ways. I like seeing a lot of what everybody's doing and then I pick and choose what I
Sure.
like. How's that work for you?
I take a pretty gentle approach to horses. So, if I'm watching someone and they're handling the horses really rough, I usually don't take a whole lot off of that. But sometimes you watch a trainer and it's like the trainer and the horse are totally in harmony. And if you just watch,
Mm-hmm.
like, there's a trainer that I watch in person sometimes, and you can just see the way that he moves his legs or the way he moves his hands when he's working, like, on riding a horse. Especially with some of the older trainers, you can kind of just see they have little tips and tricks that they've learned along the way. And I like to focus on the smaller things as opposed to the big dramatic changes in the horse because I like to
Mm-hmm.
see the big dramatic change.
Yeah. Is that something that came pretty natural to you to look for those little changes, those little things?
A lot of times, I think from the start, I tried to look at the whole picture, and then after I worked with the trainer for a few months, one on one, she is the one that told me all the stuff about the horse's thoughts. And she really encouraged me as well to look at the small things that lead up to the big change.
I think that's a great approach rather than just taking people who say they have expertise somewhere, really looking at their results and, whatever part of life it is, whether it's looking for ways to improve your mental health or your physical health or your finances, really anything. It's such a great approach to look at someone who's kind of doing it the way that you want to do it, doing the things that you're aspiring to, and really take what the wisdom that they have and use that in your life. So I love that.
Absolutely. It's definitely something you can apply to humans or horses.
Well, I just really want to commend you for the work you do. I love your account and the things that you share. Echo's just so cute. I can see why you picked him. And I love the approach that you take to just keep learning and keep trying things. I think that is so important, whether it's with horsemanship or with Mustangs or with life. to, if there's something you want to do, get out there and try it. And if you don't know how to do it, find some people that you can kind of model after and learn from. And I think that will really work for your benefit and get you far. Thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me.
No problem. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. I was so excited when you asked me. I kept telling everybody, I was like, I got invited on a podcast.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved hearing about Echo's story and just the things you've learned. I think Mustangs are just the best teachers. Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.